Welcome to the African American Museum and Library at Oakland, and welcome to another session of Meet the Artist. My name is Bamidele Dimerson. I'm the Chief Curator of AMLO, as the African American Museum and Library at Oakland is popularly called. And I'm pleased to welcome a multifaceted artist who is based in Oakland. His name, and he's sitting right beside me, his name is Charles Blackwell. He is a poet, playwright, musician, and painter. And so we're looking at a couple of images of, well, three different images of Charles right now. And Charles, welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
Um, Today, we will focus on a few topics. And so we have some questions, and I want to know about, uh, they will relate to art and its function in our society today, uh, your exposure to art during your formative years, some examples of your painting. So we'll look at a couple of examples. And I want to know about what organizations have been supportive of you, uh, of your development during your years as a professional artist. So, so let me ask you, what is art?
To me, art is something that comes from within, something that is needed, an expression to help one, the individual, exist and cope and be expressed in this society, and also to help others to exist and cope in this society in which we live. And I say that because it's this expression, and it's like creative expression. And especially today, because we live in a world that, if you look at the construction of buildings, apartment buildings, or whatever it may be, square boxes, rectangular shapes, very, very alienating, very disconnected to the human spirit. And so art is here to give something away from the alienation and maybe create a sense of belonging to, like they say in art, feelings relate to objects. And so in that sense, alienated square boxes is, it's really telling us, in a sense, it's almost defining who we are.
So in some ways, art gives us back our humanity.
Yes, yes, bring us back to humanity. Yes. There was a poem I wrote about, because the housing is so, people are being displaced in Oakland, and all just a real rampage of.
Yeah, not only Oakland, it's all over the country.
Right, yes. And it says, the Rolling Stones, give me shelter so I can breathe, so I can pray, in hopes I won't lose my last ounce of humanity. And that's that kind of describes the situation that's in Oakland and all over the country.
Yes, indeed. So art does, in fact, give us our humanity.
Yes.
Or it presents it in a way that we can be appreciative of that humanity.
Yes.
You have been quoted as saying, quote, I make art to be an encouragement and inspiration to myself and others. I love when I can inspire others to live and discover wonder in themselves. Um, can you elaborate on that statement?
I think I had a concern, a social concern. I think my exposure to the civil rights movement, the 6 o'clock news would come on, and I was all ears. I was listening to uh, uh, Martin Luther King, Abernathy, uh, Joseph Lowry, James Farmer. Oh man, I was thrilled about James Farmer. And, you know, the list goes on. Medgar Evers, I had a chance to meet Murray, Murray Lee Evers. And then I finished when, well, I lost my part of my eyesight when I was an art major. And so when I got back in college, I finished in sociology. And then I dropped out of graduate school, social work. So there was this concern, and I was kind of feeling my way because I didn't know what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And so, in terms of, I realized people like a lot of the artists, Roy DeCarava, with the camera, and it's funny. My grandmother had the book, and I never read it until years later. Gordon Parks, A Choice of Weapons. And I realized that you could take art and you could make statements, conceptual art, and you could also inspire people, encourage people. So living in Washington, D.C., I was trying to feel my way, you know, because, you know, D.C. had a problem in terms of homelessness at that time during the 80s. And it also had a problem in terms of the homicide rate was 540. And you had people that were selling drugs and you know, it was this deprivation and what can you, and I used to say, what can you do to reach this person? What can you do to encourage a person to live? I remember this artist, Charles Stuggs, he was in the building, and he got criticized because he was using oil-based enamels. But people in California were using oil-based enamels 10 years before he discovered them. And but that was an East Coast tradition. And sometimes I realized you had to break from tradition in order to live. You had to break from tradition in order to be, you know, what God made you to be, you know. So I find myself, I've been affiliated with the Tenderloin Hospitality House in San Francisco for, I say from about since 2003. And I've been producing art in the Tenderloin, which is probably one of the worst skid rows in the country. Right now, something like 2 people a day dying from fentanyl. And a woman came in one day from the street, and I guess she'd seen my art, and she came in. I was working on a piece. She said, "Brother, I just want to tell you, your work really, I really enjoy your work. Your work, it really inspires me." To me, that was receiving a degree from somebody to come in and let you know, you know, and because this is, like I said, the Tenderloin is just pure deprivation. I call it the bottom of the barrel. And for someone to say that, and she was in good health, you know. And so that lets you know, you're trying to reach people, inspire people to live, because a society right now, America is a society that is based on death and destruction.
But you have you have the ability, and you've shown us the importance of exploring, thinking, and creating art. Um, uh, uh, when you were in public school, did you feel a push or a pull in a particular direction to become a poet, to become a musician, or to become a visual artist? Uh, was there a pull on your creative impulses, or did you perceive one?
You know, grade school, I received compliments and encouragement, and it was kind of kind of lost. You know, how do you handle it? You know, and then there was this one class I had, and they crammed classical music down your throat. This one teacher, and I mean, I can appreciate classical music now, but back then it was like I had an early interest in jazz, even in grade school. So Louis Armstrong was on TV on the Ed Sullivan Show. I was all ears. Count Basie, Duke Ellington was on TV, you know, because that's all you could get. I was growing up in Sacramento. So when the test came, they tested us to see if you were going to go from music or into art. Going from the 6th grade to junior high, 7th grade, I did all I could to try to flunk the test. I went down TF, true, false, you know, and and then it was you know, A B A B C A B B. You know, I don't know. It was something about me. I just didn't care, but I didn't want to be in music. Well, the sad thing is that I passed the test for music, and bang, I'm in a music class, and I didn't know that I had. I think I had a talent for music. I knew I had a talent for art. And so now it's John Philip Sousa marching band. And the instructor was just kind of blase, you know. And they gave us, I said drums because I had seen Philly Joe Jones play with the Count Basie band. It was a performance called Stars for Freedom. And they were raising money for the civil rights movement. And my mother, you know, went with another friend, and I was thrilled. Oh man, I had a chance to see Count Basie. You know, I'm in junior high, you know. Okay. And not only that, they raised the money for the civil rights movement. And there was a singer, her name was Lorez Alexander. She sung. I mean, I was just taken. I was thrilled, you know. And so Count Basie was playing drums. So I'm in the seventh grade, but I'm gonna take up drums. I guess he had an impact on me, but they gave us this little square pad with a piece of rubber on it to beat on, and that killed my interest also. And so at the middle of the school year, I transferred back to art. And I'm gonna tell you the truth. Years later, we realized that the school district did a lot to cripple the neighborhood. It was institutionalized racism. Mm. And one of the stories that really stick out, and I'm seventh grade, and I mean, I wasn't the number one class clown, but I clowned around, you know. And there was this white girl sitting behind me, and I said something, nothing insulting or anything like that, you know. And she went and spoke to the principal. Next thing you know, they dragged me out of class. It was the principal, it was the girls' principal, and basically what it came down to, he told me, you need to stick to your own kind. I mean, I got hit with a dose of racial hatred, you know, and this girl, I think I made sure I never said another word to her. We were in the same class, and I was just shattered. And so, an instructor, I think her name was Mrs. Washington, and she kind of was caught in between because the girl had went to the principal's office, so she couldn't, you know, do anything. And then there was another instructor. He was a math teacher. His name was Middleton, and he had a good influence on me. And I remember he told us, who do you think invented the cotton gin? You think Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin? He said, a black man invented the cotton gin. You know, he was spoke like this. And so, and this was before Black history studies came out. And I got good grades in math. And next thing you know, he was gone. And I think he stood up to the principal. I think that's part of the reason he was gone, because he didn't, he was well defined as a black man. Mm-hmm. And I say that because that had an impact on me. You know, it's almost like I was in an art class doing my art therapy.
Okay. And, you know, I think that speaking up and, you know, having an instructor, a teacher that provided an example, who made an analysis, the persons who were picking cotton were more than likely the ones that invented the process.
Yes.
And I heard the same thing from my teachers when I was in middle school as well. And so that's something that, you know, the miseducation or the directed education that takes place.
Yes.
Now you have you stated that you went to see Count Basie. Yes. Or your mother took you to see Count Basie.
Yes.
But you also have listened to musical artists on the radio and television.
Oh, yes.
And you even told me before that you would read the liner notes on album covers.
Yes.
I don't know how many middle schoolers would read the liner notes.
You know, it's funny. I was after a few incidents, well, they had organized the busing program. And so they bused us from a neighboring school to another school. And the first day, a white parent showed up and basically with protest signs and let us know that they didn't want us there. This is California, 1960.
Okay, what city?
In Sacramento.
Sacramento. Okay.
And so uh, my grades were going down. I was a poor student. I had a history class, and it was world history, and I did real good. And the teacher says it was a low level class, and she said, "You do good on the next test. I'm going to have you move to the upper division." So I did good, thinking, "Oh, this is gonna be good. I'm gonna move to an upper division class." And I moved to the upper division class, and the teacher was welcome to a white racist instructor, and he would pick at black students. And it was just before the day of the riot. He had it in for me. He wanted to drag me in and have me paddle. And this other sister, she was right behind me, and Charles wasn't in it. And so he left me alone. And the day of the riot, they was hunting for him, and they couldn't find him. Black students were hunting, they couldn't find him. Mm. And he was a smart white racist. And I said that I had an art class, and I did good in art. That was probably the only class I did good in. And maybe I was doing my therapy. And one day, the instructor, she was very prim and proper and tradition. And I think the one thing I learned from that class is if you make a mistake, work your way through it. Don't, because she didn't want you throwing away art supplies.
Oh yeah.
And it was a good piece of information because over the years I've learned how to work my way through, and what the piece started out as became something like improvisation kicked in, and it came out better than what I thought I had planned. So that was good. That was a learned experience. But one day this girl was at the table and everything is going good, and she decided she was going to do a drawing of me, and it was okay, except she was white and she really didn't know. She painted me, but then she decided to come in with black ink and she painted it black. And at that time, she didn't know how to do shading or whatever. So here I am, this black face. I mean, and it was before, just before black is beautiful, and it's so beautiful to be black. Mm-hmm. And she kind of was on the, and what I did, I spilled some ink on the piece, and the instructor reprimanded me, so, and she only complimented her. So, you had to deal with this on a constant basis, mm-hmm. Aside from, white students kicking you and shoving you against the locker and calling you a nigger and a black stuff. I mean, day in and day out. And so later, that spilled into my work. And then my education became, like you said, reading the linear notes on the album covers. I won a subscription to Downbeat magazine. I remember I was reading, at that time his name was Leroy Jones, and later he became Emil Baraka. And it was a thing I remember I was reading the thing in Downbeat magazine. I'm in high school, and it was about Apple Corps. And it was a book that he had come out with, Mm-hmm. And there was other things. I remember they had the blindfold test, and then they had a thing on the back of the different clubs. And I said, man, when I get older, I want to go to those clubs. They would list who was performing in those different cities, And I said, okay. Yeah. And so I said, wow, I hope I can go to those clubs, And so that became my education, learning about these artists, these John Coltrane, Elvin Jones, Paul Chambers, Duke Ellington, Sarah Vaughan, Billie Holiday. I'm reading these things, and that was inspiring me because, to go back to school the next day and just kind of suffer through the whole ordeal.
But it's good that you had those artists that served as a source of inspiration, yes, and information, yes, for you.
Yes.
When you were when you were 19, uh, and I think you were probably in college at that point,
Yes.
you had a fall that brought what some would characterize as catastrophic change.
Yes.
You took to heart advice given to you by your physician, and that's when it impacted your eyesight.
Yes.
What did that physician tell you?
His name was Dr. Kenneth Johnson. He was a family doctor. And he was a doctor that would speak to you as a person and even made friends with me. And he told me, he said, take your defect and make it your asset. And it was a strong piece of wisdom. I had the accident. It was a fall. I was by close to the ocean, Highway 1, not just outside of Santa Cruz. And I was with some friends, and they had stopped, got out of the van, and they had, let's say, they went to the left. But I stayed in the van because I was reading a book. And like I said, all through high school, I was a poor student. And so, matter of fact, the book that inspired me to read was Blues People by Leroy Jones, Emil Barak. This girl had it on a bus. I remember her name was Inez. So we're riding back from school. I'm on the bus. And she said, check this out. And I read a page of the book. And I said, wow. I said, let me hold on to this. She says, no, you got to go get a library card and go get the book. And she forced me to get a library card. I didn't know nothing about a library card. I didn't have no interest or aspirations, you know. And that book got me into reading. And when I met Emil Barak in New York, I told him, I said, your book was the first book I read. So anyway, I'm in the van reading this book. And when I got out a few minutes later, let's say I went to the right, I went the wrong way, and basically came down a steep embankment. And what I thought was going to be a slant, it turned out to be a drop. And it was almost the end of my life. And that's why I tell people it's by the grace of God here, because it was a near-death experience. Mm-hmm. And so that piece of wisdom that the doctor gave me, take your defect and make it your asset, it took a little while for me to realize what he was saying. So it was, I may have produced 10 pieces of art during the time that I had lost my eyesight and got back into the swing of things in terms of producing art again. I was out of art for at least 7 years. And so I produced some pieces. And I didn't even know I was actually coming out with a different approach to art and didn't even know it. Okay. They were more abstract. They were more expressive. And so, and then I found out I had a second God-given talent, and that was writing.
Okay.
And the funny thing about it, I had written an article about the class that was the senior class in high school. They were graduating. And I wrote an article about them, and I used to sell the newspaper. It was called the Sacramento Observer. It was an African-American newspaper. And I used to sell, I would sell the paper so I'd get out of the house on the weekend away from my mom.
Okay.
And so I called Dr. Lee. He was the owner and the publisher of the paper. And I told him about writing this article. He says, yeah, write it and get it to us. So I wrote the article and I sent it to the newspaper. And about this class graduating, they were the first busing participants in a busing program in the county. And the paper came in the mail, and I opened up the paper and I was hunting for the news article. And I looked on the back, I didn't see nothing. I called the newspaper, and the secretary, she answered the phone. And I said, I'm Charles Blackwell, and Dr. Lee, he told me to write this article. She said, yes. And I said, I wrote the article and I turned it in. She said, yes. I said, well, I got the paper came and I looked inside the paper and I looked on the back. I said, I didn't see it nowhere. She said, did you look on the front page? And I was knocked off my feet, and I told her, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I stood there, I was just in a state of awe. They ran out from me. And I mean,
And how old were you at that time?
I might have been I might have been 16 because I was in the I was a junior. I think I was 16. Yeah, because I turned 17 when I was a senior. Yeah, and I was knocked off my feet. Man. I mean, that was like getting a PhD, you know. And so I said that. So still, you know, I think I could say I suffered from poor self-esteem too. You know, so I didn't really believe that I had that talent for writing. And what gave me the ability to write that article, I used to read the San Francisco Chronicles. And I mean, I wasn't reading my schoolwork for some reason, but I would read the Chronicle, and they had excellent writers. They had some great writers at that time. They had Ralph Gleason, who would do the different events, musical presentations, you know. I remember he said, Johnny Winter was at Winterland. He said Johnny Winter had a bad summer. But if he was good, he really, you know, you got compliment.
As a someone who turned what was potentially an impediment into a new way of looking, viewing, and understanding the world, you have, in fact, really become a multifaceted artist, both poet and uh, uh, prose writer, playwright, musician, and painter. So let's look at a couple of examples of your art. And so we see here, okay, I want to let everyone know that the images used in this presentation are available from various sources found on the internet. And so these are images of Paul's work. Here are two images of you on the screen. To the right, you are reading your poetry.
Oh, yes.
And to the left, you are painting. And so we see that when you write it obviously in extra large letters.
Yes.
And you bold the letters so that you can see and understand that. And also, I'm seeing that you're very close to the work of art that you're painting. And I um, I read somewhere that you are using your peripheral vision.
Yes.
Okay. And so let's go to a couple of images. Now,
can I comment?
Oh, yes, please.
I'm using my peripheral peripheral vision. And I realize I'm using what I have. Someone told me, he said, hey man, that's really artsy. You know, you on stage with that paper, that big, and sometimes I have a big 6 foot long sheet of paper.
Yeah, and I've seen you with that paper that long.
And somebody said, man, that gives you a lot of originality, you know. And so I've learned how to incorporate that kind of like a performance art piece, you know. And I've actually written some performance art pieces, plays, and then producing the artwork. Now that's when I'm doing the artwork, I have to, you know, be close, trying to see what I'm doing, and using my peripheral sight, you know. And so I think you might say I'm taking that defect and making it my asset, and just I mean, I can't sit home, sit still, and twiddle my thumbs, you know. And this society still has that notion, well, a person disabled, you should just be at home, you know, collect a disability check, and you know, twiddle your thumbs. And I'm not that kind of person. Maybe because you know, my folks were from Mississippi, and I tell people I couldn't even sleep late on a Sunday, you know. You know, my mother would get up, get busy. You got something, we got work to do, you know. So, you know, that kind of instilled in me, you know.
Yeah. Well, when we look at your work, you know, I'm fascinated by the fact that it appears that your favorite subject would be musicians. that's recurrent in your work. And so you have a huge body of work uh, that certainly includes musicians, and sometimes they are appear singly, as in these two images that we have here. One is playing a to the left um, uh, the guitar,
Mhm.
uh, and to the right we have a trumpeter.
Oh yes, yes, yes. Yes. This the guitar player. It's like this is really where I'm really using my blindness.
Mm-hmm.
And now that may sound kind of strange, but I've I was taking an ink blotter and I was squirting ink onto the paper and
Okay.
creating the images and you know layers and you know so many squirts and squirts of the ink. And it was like instead of me using the brush or the pen to create the image, I'm using the ink blotter and very unorthodox. And I might use the ink blotter to draw a line, but most of that was done with squirt ink and maybe from a foot away, you know. But it and I realized it was working. I did a number of pieces on musicians with ink blotter. I guess you call it ink blotter squirting technique.
Okay, well then we appreciate your inventiveness.
Yeah.
But you know, you explore, you think, and you create art, and you are innovative. Uh, and so we have, and you thank you for that explanation for the
Yes.
looking at the guitar player.
Yes.
Now, so do you work primarily with inks, or do you use acrylics or oils? What's your preferred medium, and what is your the different media that you use
I
to
use
create art?
I use inks. The thing I like about inks is that they're layers and they're transparent, and so you could put a yellow on top of a green, and you'll see that green, or you'll put a yellow on top of a blue, and that blue will turn green, and it has that gloss. Okay, but I'm not stuck with just you know inks. I use acrylics. Uh, I use oil pastels. I've done just a few pieces with charcoal or chalk because you know you do the piece with chalk and you pick it up and you move it and all of a sudden the dust is falling off paper. Or maybe you know charcoal the same thing. You know you got to hurry up and get that fixed it on there. You know,
Yeah.
and so like this second trumpet piece now I might I think that was done with ink and I'm using my fingers. So I'm probably might be one of the most unorthodox artists around. So I might draw it with the ink blotter, and then I'm using my fingers, you know, creating the lines and the shapes, you know. And so, you know, the same thing, unorthodox, and a lot of stuff that I do is improvisation or serendipity.
Well, we certainly appreciate the unorthodox approaches, and so it has fueled your creativity. And sometimes you have uh, your musicians appear in pairs, and you have the image to the left. You have a saxophonist, and the man in the wheelchair is playing a trumpet. And in the second image to the right, you have a person playing the trumpet who is uh, standing somewhat in a leaning position. And then the person that's in the wheelchair looks as if he's playing a guitar.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Uh, this one on the left, I know I did that one while I was at Hospitality House in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
And you see the community of the Tenderloin. You're going to see people in wheelchairs. You'll see people on crutches. And and so I put the musician there. There was a trumpet player hanging out in the Tenderloin for a while, and he I can't remember his name, but he was playing with some big names out of Los Angeles. And he, I spoke to him just briefly, and I remember he was at a bus stop playing the trumpet one day, and so that's kind of rare. You don't find much musicians hanging out at the Tenderloin. And the other piece, same thing. I like the trumpet may not be anyone that I had noticed in the community, but I did notice the people in wheelchairs. I said, I'll just put a musician here in this community. And I've done so many pieces on jazz musicians. I must have did at least 200 or 300. More like 300, and mainly on paper, a few on canvas, but mainly on paper. Yeah.
So has anyone written an article on you and the musicians that you've painted?
There's been some articles, but they would, might be a paragraph in there about me doing these pieces about musicians.
Okay. Well, then I think that maybe your musicians should be the focus for our exhibition that we will do of the work. And here is one in which you have a group of musicians. In the center is, excuse me, in the center is the saxophonist, and then there's someone playing the bass. To the right is the drummer, and to the left is someone playing the piano. So it's a group that's jamming, if you will.
This piece here has an interesting story.
Okay.
Her name was Jan, and she was over the art gallery at Delta College in Stockton. And she was doing an exhibit with blind artists from around the country, and she got in touch with me. And she asked me to come, and I came up to Stockton, and we had to do a panel presentation. And so I asked her if would it be a good idea for me to do some poetry on the panel.
Oh, okay.
And she said, "Oh, Charles, that would be great." So what happened, she told Brian Kendricks, who was in the music department, and she told her about the poem that I did. It was a jazz poem. Anyway, one thing led to another. He used this piece for a CD cover for the Delta College Jazz Orchestra.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and then he had me come up to Delta College, and he wanted me to. I did a poem, and he was on drums, and they had an orchestra presentation that night, and he was on drums, and I did the poem, and it was great. And then he had me do a presentation at his class, and at first he said he wanted me to talk for 15, 20 minutes. And I kept waiting for him to stop me, and he didn't stop me. And I looked around, and I kept going. I kept waiting. And he said it was so good. And that's all that because I had learned from reading those linear notes and reading Emil Baraka, and here I am. And he said, I remember he told me he had trouble with this one student in the class. And the student came up to me when the class was over, asking and talking to me. And I, tried to encourage the student, and he was so thankful. He said, you reached that guy, And so
that's good.
Yeah, that's the history of this piece right here. And I'm amazed. And
do you still, how many covers for books or album covers or CD covers and so forth, or illustrations or flyers that people have had asked you or commissioned you to create? How many do you think that you have done?
I think I've done about at least 4 to 5, maybe 6 CD covers. I know I did at least, I did my own cover for my book, Redemption Beyond Blindness and Is the Color of Mississippi Mud. And I know I did at least 2 or 3 other book covers. And,
okay.
Many times, this one friend, he wanted to come. I said, yeah, he gave it to him. He was helping me out. So I said, hey, man, you can have it. And the same thing, somebody else wanted one for a CD cover. I said, hey, don't worry about it. You got it. We had worked together, because, I'm just, if I'm doing good, I'm grateful to God I'm doing good, and so I'm not gonna try to hustle other artists because most artists are trying to struggle and survive anyway.
Mm-hmm. And one of the other things that I noticed when looking at your body of work, African masks and sculptures are significant. In the image on the right, we see two masks, and yet we see two dancers, and then we see someone playing a portrait to the left of them. And the image on the left is it looks to be that of a dancer.
Oh yes, yes,
Yeah, in red, white, and blue.
yes. Oh yes, yes,
And so it appears that African art is a source of some of your inspiration. Can you speak to us about that and why specifically you have chosen African imagery?
yes. Uh, I was selected as a Sacramento County Cedar artist
Mm-hmm.
when Jimmy Carter was president, and they had the CETA, Comprehensive Employment and Training Act, and the work that I had did during that time I was out of art when I lost my eyesight and got back into the swing of things. I submitted photos of those pieces. And a friend of mine, John Marshall, he said, "No, man, file for the job." I wasn't even going to file for the job, and he shot the photos and turned them in.
Mm, okay.
It poor self-esteem, and not really knowing. And so that's how I met Alan Gordon, Professor Alan Gordon. And I was at
Oh, the artist.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
Alan Gordon. And at that time, he was head of the art department at Cal State Sacramento. And so this lady was organizing this group, and it was called something like Organization of Third World Artists, in the Third World Arts, or something. And the group kind of fell apart. Everything fell apart. A lot of tragic stuff happened. But Alan, he said, "I want to see your art." I said, "Yeah, okay." He said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa. Where's your studio?" And I was using my apartment. I'll come back one day. And I said, "Yeah, okay, okay." And he came across much stronger than what he appeared to be. And so he came by and he saw these. I remember I had these pieces. They were on large paper mache pieces, and they were about 3.5 by 4 feet. And he said, "Oh, you're doing African." I said, "I don't know. I never took no classes in African art." He said, "You don't have to. It's in you." And he educated me on something that day. And then the next thing you know, he said, first he said, he came by one day, we were playing checkers. He said, you got any wine? I said, "Yeah, I got a little bit." He says, he said, "Let's go to New York." I said, "New York? I ain't never been to New York."
Mm-hmm.
And it was called a College Art Association. And I went to that, and that's how I met David Briscoe.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I remember David Briscoe had just washed his stock. He was in the hotel. He washed his stock, and Alan was teasing him about, "You trying to save money, and you just washing your stocks." And there was another artist. I think his name was Henderson, and he was young, and he had an exhibit, and we went to see his exhibit.
Was that Napoleon?
No, Henderson, and he passed away real young. It was really sad. He was a nice guy. I really liked him. And so next thing I know, a few months later, Alan said, "Let's go to Atlanta." I said, "What's that?" He said, "The National Conference of Art." I said, "No." I said, "Who's that?" He said, "A group of black artists from around the country." So I went to Atlanta, and we stayed at the Pasco's Motor Lodge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was my big introduction to African art.
Well, you know what? I was at that conference as well.
And that's when I first met you.
Yeah.
Didn't even know.
and, and a number of the people who were in NCA at that time, and those who are still involved in NCA, appreciate African art, and it's a source of inspiration from their own visual creativity. We're looking at your use of masks as a source of inspiration in these three images here. There's one of a double mask, one mask in front of the other. And here in the center is a mask, but flanked by a person playing a bass, and then someone carrying a load on her head. And then the other to the right, uh, the mask appears again. So you use masks as well as ceremonial masks, as well as ritualistic uh, artifacts as well, or ritualistic sculptures.
Yeah.
Um, you've commented on the use of these as a way of understanding and promoting Black beauty.
Yes, yes, yes. Uh, when I attended the NCA, it helped me. It gave me inspiration, gave me encouragement. The National Conference of Artists, and me being it helped me to come out because I was a I was a little bit withdrawn before I lost my eyesight, and then I had to be a extrovert after I lost part of my eyesight, and uh, and then the NCA helped me. I would go to the National Conference of Artists. I was the biggest extrovert around. I wanted to meet everybody.
Oh yeah, well, you can't go to an NCA conference and be withdrawn.
Yes,
It's not
yes,
possible.
right, right. And what they did, I remember in Atlanta, they had the luncheon, and I think it was John Lockhart, who you knew, and he was reading something, and this lady did this dance, and I had met her just earlier, spoke to her, and she had this real, just cordial, polite spirit about her. And then she did this dance. Oh man, she was just incredible. And we were on these long tables, and there was an aisle, and she came up and down those aisles with these leaps and these twists. Man, I was taken. And so I realized what they were doing, they weren't separating. This is the artist, these are musicians. They brought it all together. Like, nothing is separated. Art, music, dance, and that's when I learned about what is it that makes African art, line, shape, rhythm, color, movement, and not here trying to figure out, is this going to match my decor? You know, I was in a news article one time and I stated that, if you want something to match your decor, you got to go down the street to the interior decorating or furniture store. I'm busy producing art, Afrocentric art. And so in doing the math, I realized uh, the sculptures, there's a certain beauty in these sculptures. There's a beauty in the way they do the eyes, the way they do the lips. And if we take time to look at each other without trying to find out, oh, they need some makeup or they need some. It was so sad about Michael Jackson. I mean, that young kid, he was, I mean, that was a handsome brother. I mean, he could get any woman, but all of a sudden he did all this stuff to destroy the beauty of who he was. Cut this, cut that. And so we see a lot of African American society today. That's what they're doing. They're busy with the, I don't know, extensions, additions, rearrangement, everything, and they can't accept. No, wait, wait, wait. There already is a beauty in who you are. Uh, you have features that no other nationality on the face of this earth has. Uh, you could frown your eyes and scare the slot out of somebody. But at the same time, you can move your eyes and entice someone. And so it's there. And that's what I'm doing because the phrase used to be black is beautiful and it's so beautiful to be black. And it don't make no difference what color you are. You could be Pete. It was the poet Langston Hughes did the poem about all the beauty of the women at Harlem and peachy creamy tan, lemon yellow, fudge, or peachy creamy beige, and deep dark chocolate and cocoa, on down the line. And so there it is. And if we could ever get to the point, stop, put on brakes, and realize we don't have to be whatever it is society is dictating, or whatever the powers that be is dictating, we can be what God made us to be. So Anyway,
You know, and you had mentioned John Onye Lockhart. We have an exhibition, an online exhibition of his work right now here at the museum.
oh yes,
And so please, I want to make sure that everyone, uh, please go to our website
yes,
and tap into that exhibition.
yes.
That exhibition is titled, just one second here, Mother, Artist, Healer, Warrior. And the subtitle is Woman as Metaphor in Paintings by John Onye. And so it's a small online exhibition, but it's one that we think will be impactful. And we hope to have the catalog out for that in a few weeks. Now, John would often speak about, and you mentioned the fact that he had as he was speaking, someone was dancing,
Yes.
and often John would pull together a number of artists, and many of them were his students, but who were dancers, who were poets, who were musicians, and uh, and he would show slides of visual art while at the same time pulling together what he called a baptism in the Black aesthetic.
Wow. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
And so that was uh, uh, that was very important. Um,
You know, John, he could make friends with you easy,
mhm,
and I would listen to him because I remember I spoke to him, a good amount when we had the national conference of artists in New Orleans, and
yes,
then like you said, there was one in Detroit,
and I was at that one
yes, yes,
because I lived in Ann Arbor at the time.
and I remember I stumbled into this room, and I think Richard Barclay, I think he was there, and he was from New York, and he did these quick sketches of dances, and I remember I think it was me and Richard Barclay, and maybe one or two others. It could have been no more than five people, and this guy, his name was Farouk. He was on saxophone, and this woman, she came in and she had some beads on her wrist, and she had her hairs with the beads and the braids, And next thing you know, he was playing. They had a drummer and a saxophone. She did an African dance. I ain't never seen nobody. It was like similar to a Watusi, but not. It was African all the way. She wobbled across the bottom of the floor with this dance. I ain't never seen nobody do that before. And I was sitting close enough to tell I was knocked off my feet. And it was too bad. There couldn't have been no more than maybe seven people. And I'm upset the most. But we got a full dose. I mean, it was incredible, like you said. And maybe John Lockhart is the one that hooked that up because, it was, yeah.
Well, you have described in our discussions uh, uh, outside of this context, you have described you have described the National Conference of Artists, or NCA as we call it, as quote better than a family reunion.
Yes, yes.
And so, what I would like to know is how do you gauge the significance and camaraderie of NCA to your growth and development as a professional visual artist?
It had a big impact on me, and I didn't know it at the time. It's kind of like like a slow a wave coming in, and that's what it was doing because it stayed with me. It wasn't like I was there one time, and that was the end of it. And I was meeting so many artists, Dana Chandler, Napoleon Jones, and me and Arlene Crawford. She's in Chicago, and we're friends today. We're like brother sisters. And and I was so grateful for Alan Gordon turned me on to the National Conference Artists, and because the most riotous of all was probably Margaret Burroughs, who was the founder of the National Conference of Artists and the DeSable Museum.
And the Chicago South Side Art Center.
Oh yeah, yes, yes. And I I was in Boston, and I remember it had snowed, and so we went on tour, and we were on a bus tour, and I remember I was with this girl, Carolyn, and she said, "That's Margaret Burroughs over there." It was somebody sitting straight across me on the other side of the bus, and there was an MF and the so and so and the MF so and so. And I said, "What?" She said, "That's Margaret Burroughs." And I said, sometimes it takes that kind of personality to get stuff organized and get stuff done. And especially if you based in Chicago during that time, she was a mover and a shaker.
Well, Margaret definitely was a mover and a shaker. I've never heard her use that language. And she was also a very generous person.
Yeah, yeah.
She will always give out her prints
Yeah.
to individuals, but she would also give them to institutions
Yes,
and
yes,
to raise money.
yes.
And she gave us uh, at the time, she knew that I was a curator or the director of exhibitions and research at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History in Detroit, so not far from Chicago.
Mm.
And she gave me about 30 or 35 of her prints.
Mm. Mm.
And we mounted an exhibition of those
Yes.
prints around the time of her
Mhm.
90 something birthday. I don't know, it may have been
Mhm.
90th or 95th or something, but she was in her 90s. And she came to the exhibition.
Yes.
But she was a very generous spirit, a
Yes.
very giving spirit, but she knew how to get things done.
It's a funny story. I walked into the McCormick because we were having a conference at the McCormick in Chicago. I just walked in the door. She said, "Here, brother, take these buttons. This is Harold Washington's running for mayor." I said, "I don't live in Chicago." She said, "That's okay. Hand them out anyway." And Chicago was on fire for Harold Washington at that time. I mean,
yeah,
it was on fire, man.
yeah, very definitely. Now, one other organization that you've been associated with um, that has been instrumental and in assembling this group, and it's called Uncle Zika's Writer Circle. What does that? Um, what is the primary focus of that group of writers?
Okay, so I organized Cousin Zyka here in Oakland since I've been here.
Mm-hmm.
The original group is based in Sacramento, and it was Lady Ethel Ballard, and I'm still in touch with Jerry Hunter. She did a book called Polka Dots. And Ethel Ballard came out of the Negro Ensemble Theater Company in Cleveland, Ohio. So she organized this group, and no one really knew what Zika, Z-I-C-A, no one knew what it meant. And this guy, his name was Abraham, he was from Ghana. He showed up and he said, "Oh yeah, this is an African word." And that was really interesting. I can't remember what it means, but he was a part of the group. And it wound up as many as 65 people meeting at Ethel Ballard's house.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot.
Yeah, and to a point where she said, "It's too many people." She stood up, "Well, it's too many people coming in." And so it kind of went down after that. I think the core people, like maybe 15 or 20, continued to meet. And so I organized Cousin Zyka in here, and I didn't want to be the main person, so I pulled Basola. Her name was Basola, and she was affiliated with Emir Baraka and Larry Neal, and so she's got a head full of information and really just kind of make things flow. And we have Sabora Hill. She's a part of the group, and they're trying to keep it, functioning, the right way. And so the funny thing that we haven't done any publications. I mean, I do my own publishing, my work, getting my work out there. And the good thing about the one in Sacramento, out of 65 people, I think you could say 90% of them had been published. Either published one poem, two poem, 10, or maybe they did a chapbook, maybe they did a self-publication. Two of them got picked up by the big boys, the big publishers. A lady named Terrace Grimes, she got picked up by, I think it was Random House. And so this was it became a cultural, And sometimes people would come because it was a cultural hub, what it really turned out to be, you know. And so, and I would say that what other organizations that got me, that helped me when I was in college, it was my way of pushing my anger, and I got involved in a Black student union. And the good thing, the Black student unions at that time wasn't no joke. It wasn't no party. They did have a party one night, and you pay what you can, a nickel, 25 cents. So in case they needed bail money to get somebody out of jail. And because we got 9 out of 10 demands. And yeah, and so we had a person, his name was Emil Palmer. He was much older, but he knew how to deal, and he knew how to push and shove and made the demands. And like I said, we got 9 out of 10 demands for Black studies. And that helped me to feel better because I was so angry from being in that busing program and experienced just a ton of racial hatred. And so that helped me to direct my anger, you know. But there's other stuff that I did, but I ain't gonna talk about that.
Well, okay, we'll talk about that at another time, in another place. Let me ask you, we've talked about the National Conference of Artists. We've talked about Uncle Zyka's Writers Circle. And there is an organization in San Francisco. What is art lifting, and why is that organization important?
Art lifting, okay, I'm still affiliated with Hospitality House Community Art Space. That's where I go and I produce a lot of work there. And they provide the supplies, and they let me come because of my disability. And there's another group, it's called New Space. It's over in Berkeley. That same thing set up for disabled artists. And so what happened, someone did a thing about me, a spill, and it was in the New York Times, and it was connected with the show from Lighthouse for the Blind. And someone saw my work, and this lady came from art lifting, and she said, I've been trying to track you down for a year. And I'm going like, boing, yoing, yoing, what is this, you know? And she told me she was with art lifting. And she came out from Boston. And she collected some other artists, but I was just kind of stuck. You've been trying to track me down, you know. And so anyway, they represent disabled artists and get their work put in exhibitions in corporate buildings, and people, individuals want to purchase the art. They set it up so they could purchase the art from disabled artists, and
oh, that's great.
It's been a real blessing to me because I don't have to mat it, I don't have to frame it, just turn the work to them. And because you know, mat and frame, you can go broke. And
oh, definitely.
And the piece you may say, let's say you want 500 for the piece, and well, you got to get it matted and framed, and okay. So now the piece is going to be you want 800 because you had to.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other person that comes along say, well, I thought about getting it, but I changed my mind.
Well, you know, I want to say thank you, Charles, for allowing us uh, to take a glimpse into your world of creativity. Thank you for sharing your art with us today. I feel encouraged. I feel inspired. Um, and we're just so appreciative.
I want to say thank you very much. And I'm so glad I ran into you at the supermarket that day waiting for the bus and found out that, hey, wait a minute. I met you 30 years ago.
yeah, very definitely. And we attended conferences in at Atlanta, Detroit, Chicago, and Boston too.
Oh yeah. Oh okay.
So you know.
Then you know all about that blizzard too, huh? You remember the blizzard?
Yeah. And so you know, I'm so grateful that we were able to reconnect when I moved here to the West Coast, and specifically to Oakland. And uh, I mean, you mentioned Arlene Turner Crawford.
Yes.
Uh, and I met her through NCA as well.
Yes. Yes.
And so it's and some of the names that you brought up today,
yes,
were names that people who I've interacted with. And so this has been very important. Well, we're looking to at some future date,
yes,
in the not too distant future,
yes,
of you of us hosting an exhibition of your musicians here.
Oh, yes.
Uh, your paintings, your drawings,
yes,
your creative vision of musicians. And so,
yes.
but for now, let me just say thank you so much for appearing
Thank you
on
very
this
much.
program.
Yes, sir, brother.
All right. Thank you.